You know that feeling, right? The dream of wide open rooms, endless storage when you've been living in a space so tight and stuffed to the gills. I definitely did. 8 years ago, I moved from a single-room apartment without a basement to a bigger apartment with a basement. I remember standing in that echoing concrete room, a cavern of possibility, and I thought, this is it. The clutter war is over. My stuff will finally have a home and I will never feel overwhelmed again. 8 years later, every single shelf in that glorious basement was double stacked. Boxes were breeding in the corners like cardboard rabbits, and I still couldn't find the tape gun. It hit me then. If more square footage was the answer, no one living in a bigger home would ever be drowning in stuff. But the truth is, our brains are wired in a funny way. They don't see empty space as a luxury to be savored. They see it as a challenge, a vacuum that must be filled. So here's a statistic that shattered my denial, the one that made me realize this wasn't just my problem. A study from UCLA's Center of Everyday Lives of Families found that 3 out of 4 American families can't park their cars in the 2-car garage. Why? Because they're crammed to the rafters with what the researchers called overflow. More space didn't magically organize their lives. It just gave them a bigger closet to hide the problem. Does that sound familiar to you? It's a classic case of the empty space trap, and it's sneaky because it promises freedom but delivers even more overwhelm. There's a famous idea called Parkinson's law, which states that work expands to fill the time available. Well, clutter follows the exact same rule. Give a drawer 3 inches of wiggle room and tomorrow it will be overflowing with space cables and forgotten batteries. Offer up an entire empty basement and congratulations, you've just created a museum of postponed decisions, a graveyard for all your maybe someday items. And this is also where my favorite KonMari method gets tricky, because more space lures us into thinking that we love the blouse or that book just because we have this space. Psychologists call this tendency space hoarding. It's a close cousin of loss aversion, which is our brain's powerful bias to avoid losses more than we enjoy equivalent gains. So, put simply, we are more afraid of needing an item later than we hate tripping over it today. So we keep things. We cling to them because of a perceived future purpose, even if the odds of that purpose ever happening are incredibly low. We think, what if I need this weird space part for a gadget I don't even own anymore? Or, this could be useful for a craft project I will never actually start. That fear is what stops us from letting go. And honestly, it's not just fear. Let's not forget the dopamine hit, that little rush when we get from finding a deal or snagging a unique item. It feels good in the moment because that brief thrill completes the cycle. We acquire, we store, then the loop continues. The bigger the container, a drawer, a closet, or a basement, the less urgency we feel to declutter, and the larger the pile grows. Because our brains are constantly processing visual stimuli, and an overcrowded space sends signals of chaos, making it harder to relax, draining our cognitive resources, and even elevating stress hormones like cortisol. So if you ever sighed and said, "Oh, I just need better storage," then pause this video, drop a me in the comments, and keep watching. Because the real solution isn't more bins, it's a completely new mindset. So let's go back to my basement. After the initial shock wore off, I did what most of us do. I tried to organize my way out of the problem. First came the industrial strength shelves, and then came the clear stackable bins, because if they're clear, you can see everything inside, right? And finally, I painstakingly labeled every single one. I was convinced I was winning. But weeks later, I noticed something so ridiculous I had to laugh to keep myself from crying. I had started shopping for items to replace the things I couldn't find inside those perfectly labeled bins. Seriously, the very space that promised freedom and order had become a clutter black hole. Instead of simplifying my life, it was making it more complicated. Research from Princeton Neuroscience Institute confirms that visual chaos isn't just a messy-looking problem. It actively competes for your attention. Every extra object in your field of vision, even if it's just sitting there, demands a piece of your cognitive bandwidth. And your brain is forced to work overtime just to filter out all that irrelevant stimuli, which depletes your mental energy, leads to fatigue, and kills your productivity. My bigger apartment, instead of making me feel relaxed, was quietly exhausting me. So I finally broke the cycle when I accepted a hard truth. Square footage isn't a solution, it's a responsibility. It's not about having more room, it's about being more intentional with the room you have. Here are the 4 counterintuitive habits that finally helped me keep my flaws visible and also, more importantly, my mind clear. The first one, and it sounds maybe bizarre, I know, our instinct is to fill every nook and cranny. But try this. Intentionally leave one shelf, one drawer, or one corner of the countertop completely empty. Your brain will tingle with the primal urge to put something there. It will whisper, look, perfect spot for that thing or whatever. Sit with that discomfort. Acknowledge the urge and just let it pass. After about a week, something amazing happens. The itch fades. That empty shelf flips from being a source of stress to being proof of your control. Interior designers call this visual breathing room. It gives your eyes a place to rest, but it's also a powerful way to retrain your brain to value spaciousness over stuff. The second one is the one in, one out. And this rule is nothing new, but we usually treat it as a silent promise we immediately forget. The tweak that makes it work is to vocalize it. When you bring home a new sweater, don't just think, I'll get rid of an old one later. Stand there and announce to yourself, I'm keeping this new navy sweater and I'm donating the faded gray one. Vocalizing your intention, even if you're just talking to your dog, triggers accountability. Something researchers suggest that making a concrete plan can dramatically increase a follow-through. And one study showed that writing down a plan to exercise more than doubled the follow-through rate. And vocalizing makes a decision real, concrete, and much harder to ignore. But also having an accountability buddy helps. Best the one you share your household budget with, or otherwise you find a friend. The third one is about impulse buys. Impulse buys are the silent killers of a decluttered home. You walk into a store for one thing and you get dazzled with the displays, and suddenly your cart is full of things you never even knew you needed. To fight this, you use the so-called driveway list. Before you even walk into Target or any shop, sit in your car and write a list of exactly what you came for. And then, and this is the crucial part, screenshot it. That makes it uneditable. And these 60 seconds of pre-commitment, deciding what you need before the store's visual chaos bombards you, is a proven strategy. One study highlighted how these pre-committed tactics are incredibly effective at helping us stick to our original intentions, cutting down impulse buys significantly. And the fourth one is do quarterly audits. Spring cleaning is a nice idea, but it's a huge, overwhelming task we all dread. Instead, schedule quarterly clutter audits. Every 3 months, set a timer for just 45 minutes. Don't try to tackle the whole house, just pick one scary zone, the junk drawer or the linen closet or a shelf in the pantry. And now here's a trick. Take a picture of it. And then instead of standing in the mess and feeling defeated, just scroll through the photos on your phone, because the camera removes what I call the familiarity filter. Suddenly you see the broken frame you've ignored for months and the dried up markers, because the photo gives you a detached, objective view that our brains can't get when we're living in the clutter. And once you've dealt with an item, toss it, donate it, or put it away, delete the picture. That visual feedback is incredibly satisfying and reinforces your progress. So, out of these 4 habits, which one feels like the biggest challenge for you? Is it first, second, third, or fourth? Tell me the number in the comments below. I'm replying to every comment with a quick tip to make it easier for you. And here's the sneakiest part of all. Sometimes clutter isn't just stuff. It masquerades as legacy. We hold on to grandma's entire teacup collection not because we need 12 sets of porcelain, but because we think we're honoring her memory. But often we're just burdening ourselves with the guilt. I used to have boxes of sentimental items I felt I had to keep. And one day I tried something different with my grandmother's teacups. I chose one beautiful cup and displayed it on a stand where I could see it every day. The rest, I donated them to charity, knowing that finding new homes would be amazing. And guess what? The memory stayed, vibrant and clear, but the physical weight, the guilt of storing things I never used, was gone. Also because research has shown that sentimental attachment to objects can activate the same brain regions as physical pain, which is why letting go can literally hurt. Here's a powerful strategy. Name the emotion. When you pick up an item and feel that pang, say it out loud. This feels like I'm betraying my grandmother, or I feel guilty letting this go. Naming the emotion or affect labeling can calm your brain's alarm system, the amygdala, and allow logic to take the driver's seat. Remember, you can keep the story without keeping the storage. Let's be clear, a decluttered home isn't a finish line you cross. It's more like a dial you constantly adjust based on your life. Some seasons you might need your camping gear easily accessible. Other times you might craving nothing but serene, empty surfaces. The goal isn't deprivation, it's intentionality. It's about consciously choosing what earns a place in your life right now. I live by a container rule that has been a game changer. For example, all my craft supplies are allowed to take up the space of one specific cabinet. If a new tool comes in, something else must go before it can enter. The boundary of that cabinet is fixed, but the contents rotate. Your container might be a basket for mail, or one drawer for utensils, or one section of the basement for holiday decor. The size doesn't matter, the limit is sacred. This forces you to make constant small decisions within a predefined boundary, and this is what prevents you from slow, creeping, accumulating stuff. So here's the honest truth. More space will never save you from more clutter. It will only hide it longer, allowing it to grow in the shadows until it inevitably spills over. True lasting decluttering isn't about finding bigger hiding spots, it's about deciding ahead of time. Empty spaces isn't a vacancy to be filled. It's a precious margin, a margin that protects your focus, your time, and also your peace of mind. So tonight, I'll challenge you to try it. Leave just one shelf bare. Sit with that initial itch to fill it. When that urge passes, you have undeniable proof that you own your stuff, and your stuff doesn't own you. And if this idea has reframed how you see your home, please hit that like button, share it with a friend who just bought more storage bins, and subscribe for more ways to keep life light and intentional. Let's reclaim our space, one beautiful empty gap at a time.